When you first step into the GitHub ecosystem, it can feel like entering a huge digital workshop. But it's one built specifically for developers and DevOps engineers like you. I'm Peter Detender, a lead technical trainer here at Microsoft. In this module, I want to give you a clear, approachable overview of the different products GitHub offers and how they work together to support the way you build, collaborate, and deliver software. Think of GitHub not just as a code repository, but as a full platform that helps you manage your workflow end-to-end, from writing your first line of code into deploying a production-ready application. As we work through the different parts of the platform, you'll see how GitHub gives you the tools you need to collaborate with teammates, automate repetitive tasks, and maintain control over your development process. So whether you're a solo developer experimenting with a side project or working within this large enterprise that needs scalable governance, the GitHub product family provides the right level of structure and flexibility. My main goal is to help you understand not just what these products are, but how they fit into your daily development routine. Now, before we jump into the specific features, it's important for me to set expectations about the journey we're taking in this module. You're going to hear me talk about different account types, plans, access models, because GitHub offers multiple ways to structure your work depending on who you are and how your team operates. Understanding this upfront helps you make better decisions about how to structure your repositories, how to collaborate, and what features you can take advantage of. Throughout the session, I'll walk you through the different types of account developers use, how organizations manage larger groups of contributors, and how enterprises apply governance and security controls at scale. We'll also touch on different GitHub plans and what they unlock, plus how various tools like GitHub Desktop, GitHub Mobile, and the command line interface extend the way you interact with GitHub every single day. And then by the end, you'll have a solid mental model of what's available and how to choose the right options for yourself or for your team. When we look at GitHub accounts, the first thing I want you to understand is that GitHub is designed to support collaboration across different types of users and organizations. A personal account is your identity. It's where your contributions live, no matter which team or company you work for. Every action you take on GitHub, from creating a repo to filing issues, it's all tied back to your personal account. This is incredibly helpful because it means your work follows you, giving you a track record of experience and contributions. On top of personal accounts, we have organizations and enterprise accounts, which help structure work for larger teams and companies. Organizations let you centralize resources like repositories, as well as manage access for different roles, which is ideal for team-based development. Enterprise accounts go even a step further by giving larger companies a central layer of governance and policies. Things like unified security settings, billing oversight, as well as the ability to manage multiple organizations under one umbrella. So if you're working in a DevOps-focused environment, this structure ensures consistency as well as compliance across the entire company. GitHub offers several plan types, and choosing the right one depends on what you're building and how large your team is. For individuals or small projects, the free plan gives you all the essentials you need to start collaborating. Private public repositories, Dependabot alerts, and helpful amount of GitHub actions, as well as code spaces usage. If you're an individual developer who wants to use more advanced tools, GitHub Pro expands those limits and adds features that help you dig deeper into your code, like more storage and increased automation time. For larger teams, GitHub Team as well as GitHub Enterprise provide stronger collaboration and governance tools. GitHub Team is perfect for organizations that need coordinated review workflows and expanded automation. GitHub Enterprise layers on additional security, compliance, and identity capabilities. Things like SAML single sign-on, SCIM identity provisioning, and GitHub Advanced Security. If you're working in a large engineering organization, this is where you see the real biggest benefits. Consistent security policies, advanced automation, and flexible deployment options in either cloud or a self-hosted environment. Now, GitHub is not limited to the browser. You can interact with it using tools that really fit the way you already naturally work. With GitHub Mobile, I like to think of it as taking your development workflow with you wherever you go. You can quickly check notifications, even review pull requests, and stay connected to your team's activity, even when you're away from your desk. I would say it's not something you'll use to write large amounts of code, but it's perfect for keeping your work moving forward when you're on the go. On the other hand, GitHub Desktop is built for developers, DevOps engineers who prefer a visual, intuitive experience on your local computer. It gives you a clean interface for committing changes, managing branches, and handling pull requests without needing to memorize all those Git comments that we talked about before. It's especially useful for developers transitioning into Git or anyone who wants that streamlined workflow supported by clear visuals. And for team collaboration, it also helps standardize Git best practices and makes contributing more accessible. And then for those of you who love productivity and automation, GitHub CLI command line interface is a game changer. Instead of switching between your terminal and your browser, you can interact with GitHub directly from the command line. Creating repositories, managing issues, reviewing pull requests, and even triggering GitHub action workflows. This is incredibly powerful for DevOps engineers who want to script common tasks or integrate GitHub operations into automation pipelines. The CLI also works consistently across Windows, macOS, and Linux, and it supports secure authentication methods like SSH and OAuth. If you're working in that enterprise environment, it can even connect to your on-premises GitHub Enterprise server. So whether you're building tooling, automating your processes, or just love keyboard-driven workflow, GitHub CLI helps you work faster and with fewer interruptions. The other part is GitHub billing. Billing in GitHub can seem confusing at first, but once you break it down, it becomes much more straightforward. Every account, whether it's your personal account, organization, or enterprise, receives its own bill. If you're managing multiple environments, this helps you separate personal usage from work-related expenses. Each bill combines two types of charges: your subscription plan and anything you use that is billed based on a consumption. Subscriptions cover predictable costs, like your chosen plan or products that have a fixed monthly price like GitHub Copilot or certain marketplace applications. On top of that, usage-based billing applies to services like GitHub Actions and storage for build artifacts. For DevOps engineers, this matters because heavy CI workloads can really impact your bill. So understanding where your usage comes from helps you stay in control of your costs and still optimizing your workflows. Which brings me to the demo section for this module. I'll walk you through how GitHub's key products behave in real-world scenarios. So you'll see how GitHub Mobile and GitHub Desktop complement your development workflow, and how you can adjust your GitHub plan based on what your team needs. These hands-on examples make the concepts we've discussed concrete, giving you a little bit of a sense of how to integrate them naturally into your workflow. So this demo, 3 parts. GitHub plans, I'll show you a little bit of what the settings, the personal account, organizational account, what that looks like, a little bit about the billing, and then also touching on GitHub Desktop, the GitHub tool that allows you to run a lot of GitHub interaction from a desktop application, and then closing what it looks like from a mobile device. So I'll start with my GitHub portal as always. So if you navigate to github.com, providing your account name, from there you authenticate, pretty obvious, and you can navigate. I'm going to highlight the profile for a second, because what you can do here is highlighting your contributions. So I can see that I have close to 59 followers, might be relevant in like open source collaboration aspect of it. I can see the organizations and enterprises I belong to, which obviously in my case, no secrets, I'm connecting to the Microsoft environment. And you can add a lot more, like doing a little bit of social media exposure, I could say. And then also interesting is the number of at least public repo contributions over the last year. From here, I can navigate to my account. I go into settings and I can pull up more account information. First thing I want to highlight here is what I mentioned in the presentation, that currently I'm using my personal account, but my personal account is linked to different organizations and belonging to an enterprise. So I can switch my context if I want to move to a different organization where maybe I have different permissions. I could actually do that straight from here. I can enable single sign-on. Not going to talk too much about it yet, but single sign-on allows me to reuse my credentials to navigate to other organizations. We also have billing, where you can define the GitHub plan you're using. Typically, I would say as an organizational member or an enterprise member, I would assume that for you as an individual, it might not all be that relevant. But at the same time, remember we talked about different components in a GitHub plan, where you got the monthly cost, like GitHub Copilot could be one example, or the consumption-based, and that's what you see here. So I can get a view on my cost consumption. So I'm running like an interesting number, $1.11 US. It's like the first week of the month. I didn't run too many actions, so I can immediately see like what's the cost over the last X amount of days. Could be last month, could be the last 6 months. That's up to you to define. A little bit further down, you get more details about the actual consumption. So again, this refers to my actions, but if I use code spaces, I'll talk about this a little bit later on in the next module. I can pull up my GitHub Copilot large language models. And again, each and any of these components come with a different cost. And then even more down, again, my environment is obviously not super impressive, but look at this from like a organization enterprise perspective, where if you're like the CFO or maybe the department manager, like a DevOps engineer lead, it could mean that you get access, and obviously you need to correct permissions to get access to all these kinds of information. There's a lot more in your personal account settings. I'm not going to touch on all of them, but want to highlight the usage once more, where you can also see a little bit of a trend analysis. We can drill down and go to licensing. And this is where I would say the official title of the module is probably reflected best, where you're going to define what kind of GitHub plan, like again, features linked to a cost, do I want to use linked to my account. I'm using the GitHub base plan, and important from here, maybe not all to memorize, but you can validate immediately, like out of this specific plan, what is the GitHub feature or the collection of features that I do get access to, but then also what part am I still missing, which would mean if I need any of the other capabilities, the other features, I need to switch to a different plan. So that's a bit, I would say, in short, what the GitHub plans look like. From here, I'm going to shift to the next topic, and that's using GitHub Desktop. So again, as mentioned in the presentation, GitHub Desktop is a little tool that you can run on different platforms, Windows, Linux, Mac, and it allows you to interact with your GitHub environments, with your GitHub repos, but not always needing to be on the GitHub portal interface to do that. So I installed the GitHub Desktop tool. Not going to show you how to do that. Basically install the files, download the files, install. And from here you can see it's obviously the first time going to ask you to authenticate. And based on that, it's going to read out your list of repos. Exactly the same view as you have in the GitHub portal. From here, I can trigger like a clone operation, where now it's going to ask me like, these are your repos. I can search for other repos, at least the ones that I do have access to, or I could use the direct URL to pick up like a public repo or private, and then it's going to ask you for your credentials, validating, can you actually access, and then immediately running that clone to your local machine. Basically a replacement for the git clone command line operation. Another example is doing the opposite, where, like I showed you, if you watch the first module, creating the demo cats, and then in the second module, we publish that repo into a GitHub repository. Where now, if, again, you're not all that familiar with command line, or you're not using VS Code or any editor, which might not have that source control to GitHub integration, you could install GitHub Desktop and then selecting a local folder, and it's immediately pushing it into the GitHub repo backend. And it's coming with a few additional steps and settings where you can define the repo name, which is the local folder, what is the name of the repo on the GitHub site, adding the open source license, adding the git ignore, and pretty much identical experience to doing the same from the browser. Last example is using GitHub interactions from a mobile device. So I'm going to connect to my mobile device here, and what you need obviously is installing the GitHub mobile application. From here, pretty obvious, it's again using your account. So it's using the same PE tender GitHub profile or GitHub account linking to the profile. And from here, I get access to all my GitHub information. It's not specifically linked to one repo. So it's considering that, hey, this is your mobile app, and you get access to everything that you can manage. So since we talked about pull requests in one of the previous demos, I'm going to use that as an example where we used the demo cats, one of the last demos, right? Pull request, make it more lovely. And you can see from here. The other part is that, again, it's probably not recommended to use this as a coding editor, but I can see the full details of the pull request. I can go all the way into actual code files. And from here, I can take actions. So I can look into the files, and it's going to show me if I do have the permissions, like if I'm not in a pull request, but I may be in actual code view, it would allow me to maybe make some changes, but I guess from my mobile device, probably not recommended. But at the same time, you don't need to be on your like full desktop, full development environment all the time anymore. I could navigate to my organizations. I could look into specific issues, and just doing that, I would say quick, faster, more optimized approach, working from a mobile device on a phone, maybe on a tablet. And again, you don't need to be at your machine all the time. So pretty easy, pretty convenient. I actually love this. Maybe a bit too much, but everything nowadays happens on a mobile device, right? So I think with that, let's wrap it up and switch back to the presentation. To wrap everything up, let me quickly reinforce the key ideas you've learned. You've now seen how GitHub structures accounts starting from personal identities to organizations and enterprise governance. as well as how different plan levels unlock different capabilities depending on your needs. You also explored the various tools GitHub offers to interact with your repositories, whether you prefer working in a graphical interface on a mobile device or tablet, or directly from the command line. As we close out this module, I want to thank you first of all for taking the time to explore GitHub's product ecosystem with me. Everything we've covered today, from account structures to the tools you can use and the billing models behind them, sets you up with a solid baseline for working effectively in modern development environments. Now remember, there are many different ways to continue your learning journey. I encourage you to watch other videos in this course or search for your next favorite topic on Microsoft Learn using aka.ms/learn. Thank you so much for taking part in this course. There's still a lot more to talk through, so take a little break, but don't go too far away as I got the next module waiting around the corner and covering open source and inner source project concepts. Thanks for now, and I'll see you again soon.